right, so here is going to be our pie pastry. So this pie pastry is for a savory dough, so it doesn't have any sugar in it, but some pie pastries do. So in this bowl here is 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 1.5 cups of kosher salt. Right here we have 1 cup of cold unsalted butter that they diced and already kind of broke up with the pastry blender. And here we have a 1/2 cup of ice water. And like we said, depending on the moisture in the air, this will take more or less. So the first thing that you want to do is take your cut up butter and get it into this mixture. Actually, this is so cold and put down at the bottom, it's going to be a little hard to get out. If someone could grab me just a spoon. I usually dice it, but they actually started mashing it up. And we're going to use the same technique that we did with the biscuits. We're going to cut this until we have the size. You want to be my assistant and spoon that out? We want to turn the bowl. And right now we're not introducing any heat because we have this cold butter. You can actually put the flour bowl in there too. And we want this to be about the size of peas. There's going to be some bigger, some smaller, but average. Okay? If you were to put whole sticks of butter in at this point, it would take you a lot longer to mix it up. So pre-cutting it up kind of helps us with that. And we said we want this whole thing to come together with a very small amount of liquid. Does anybody remember when we did the biscuits how much liquid we had? And what was our liquid? It was buttermilk, right? There was a little bit of honey in there. And there was a good cup or 1/2 cup that we had. This is going to hold together. This looks like a lot because there's ice in it, but we're only supposed to use a 1/2 cup. So if you look at it, it shows 1 cup, but it's going to be 1/2. So what is going to hold this really together? The butter, right? The moisture from the butter. So right now, I still have some big pieces. I'm going to keep turning the bowl, keep pushing down. And the smaller that you cut up the butter, which they did a really nice job here, the less time that you have to move around with the pastry blender. And just like with the biscuits, when you're done, the finished dough should have flecks of the butter in it. And that solid butter, right, is going to cause that lamination. So you're going to have your moistened dough and your solid butter and your moistened dough. And every time there's going to be a chunk of solid butter, it's going to melt, release the steam, and create that flake. Because remember, this has 2 things different. The first thing that makes it different from biscuits is that there's a lot less liquid. But what's the most important thing? There's no what? There's no chemical leavener. Great. So there's no chemical leavener. You can go in here with your hands and just kind of feel around and see what size the pieces are. So I said we were going to pretend that we're down at the sand and we want our whole structure to stay together, right? If we were to dip our hand into the sand and make a fist, does that stay together? No, so we're not there yet. And we're not supposed to be there because we haven't added any water yet. The problem is, when we go to add our water, if we dump it all in one spot, we're going to hydrate 1 clump of water. 1 clump of the flour, rather. So we want to try to spin the bowl and drizzle as much as we can, and then kind of like with your fingers moving like that, you want to hydrate the dough. Some recipes will call for as little as 4 tablespoons to pull the whole thing together. 1/2 cup is how many tablespoons? 8, right? So we have a little bit more because this is a lot of flour. Let's try again. Holding together? No, we're not there. When you do this for the first time, it's a little unnerving, but once you get it, you'll start to feel when it's ready. After you've done it a few times, you know you really don't even have to measure it. You'll feel that it's not so dry. You'll start to see it. It'll start to become more butter colored. Okay, so I'm up to 4 tablespoons right now. I've actually seen Alton Brown does it with a mister. He does it with like a spray bottle, which is really smart. You could invest in that in your kitchen if you make pie dough often, because again, that's all about the distribution. It's dispersed evenly all over. So now we're up to 5 tablespoons, and that's an actual dinner spoon. That's not a real tablespoon. Okay, where we're at, we're getting there. It's staying together, but it's still very, very dry. Now we said, on a night like tonight, in the winter, our hands are dry, our hair is dry. This might take a little bit more. I can already start to feel that it's moistening up, it's starting to feel different, and it becomes shaggy. Remember we talked about that shaggy dough? Okay? We're getting closer, but can you picture rolling this yet? We're not there yet. For the sake of our video demonstration, I'm going to add a little bit more. Now I can start to see it changing color too? Now why is it so important that everything's icy? What am I introducing to this butter right now? With myself, what am I introducing?
Oh, heat.
I'm introducing my body heat, right?
Yeah, climate change.
Climate change, yeah. We're introducing some climate change. Now I'm really starting to feel a difference. I haven't used my whole half a cup yet. And would it be possible, could someone grab me a piece of plastic wrap? Okay, now we're getting somewhere. We're close, but it's still very white. It still falls apart. I'm going to give it a little bit more because like we said, it's really dry. The air is really dry. And again, like I said, you want to use that plastic wrap to really help you make the most beautiful round that you can, because whatever crack you have in your dough when you start rolling it just gets bigger and bigger as you roll it. And the best pie crust has the least water. Cooks Illustrated developed a recipe in which they use vodka in it. It's a very expensive way to make pie dough. But they introduced the vodka in addition to the water. Why? Why do you think they would use vodka instead of water? First of all, it's flavorless, right? You just put that plastic rack down. Thank you.
The vapor?
It's going to evaporate, right? So it's not going to form the gluten like water will, but it also makes the dough a little easier to work with, but because before it evaporates, right, it's going to help us hydrate the dough. So now I'm going to try to do my last step. We definitely see this is holding together, right? I can see my fingers in it, and but now I got to try to get it into a disc. That's the ultimate test. Can I get this into a disc? If I were to work this a little bit more, I think just by experience that I think it's still could use just a drop more, but the more I mix it, the more I'm incorporating the butter. But I also don't want the butter too mixed in because we want what to be throughout the dough?
Flakiness?
Those solid pieces, right? So I'm looking here and I can still see that they're solid pieces. Okay, perfect. I can feel that that dryness is really gone. And we're gonna make this into 2 discs. I'm gonna put it down here. And I'm gonna work it into a loose round. And I'm gonna use the plastic wrap to my advantage. I'm gonna put that in the bowl. Okay, and I'm gonna use the plastic wrap, kind of scrape up your hands there. It's a little easier to work with the plastic wrap. And I'm gonna use this to create a nice edge. So if I'm doing a circle, right, if I'm gonna be using a pie crust, I wanna try to get the best circle round that I can. And like I said, see anywhere there's one of these cracks, when you go to roll this out, it's just gonna get bigger and bigger. So use the plastic wrap to smooth everything out. In this case, we're making a rectangle, right? So I'm going to reshape this into a rectangle and wrap it up. We're gonna let it rest so that the water continues to hydrate, and any gluten that we developed will kind of relax a little bit. And then we'll do a second demonstration on how to roll it out.